Welcome to the Hastings Shadmary Show.
I'm Andee Hastings.
And I'm Mali Shadmary.
Together, we own Hastings Shadmary, an Atlanta-based law firm specializing in family law.
This is a space where we talk all things family law and all topics that touch the area of family law, from divorce to custody to self-growth, personal empowerment, and more. We bring you the truth, from our wolf pack to yours. Hello, and welcome to the Hastings Shadmary Show. I'm Mali Shadmary, and I'm joined by my counterpart, Andee Hastings.
Hi, Mali. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm having a little bit of a day because, as we've talked about before getting on here, I feel like I have allergies. I went away over the weekend for a girls' trip. It was impromptu. It was on Friday. One of my best friends was like, "Can you just come to Asheville with me? I need to have a getaway." And I was like, "I'm going to call my dog boarder this morning, see if there's a spot open. And if there is, that means I'm meant to go." And there was, because my babies share the same room at the border. And I went and just had an adventure. And, I did it not long ago at Miami, too.
I know.
And it has been so good for my spirit. I don't take those times for granted. But, I went a little hard one of those nights. And my poor body was like, "Girl, what are you doing? We don't live like that. I don't do that anymore. I used to have my party girl days." And anyway, got home. I've had a sore throat ever since, so I feel like I have a little bit of a raspiness today. Also, I've been talking nonstop all week, so don't feel great, but I am happy because I'm sure everyone is dying to know this. But I'm happy because tonight I get to work glutes and hamstrings. It's the small things. Truly, I'm excited to do my job today, but I want to get in that gym.
I didn't even know what you were going to say. I wasn't sure what was coming next, but I was ready for it.
So I'm such a mean friend. I haven't asked you yet. How are you?
Oh my goodness, you're never a mean friend. I am great. We're moving into Andee season, which is fall, and it makes me very, very happy because hot weather and we're not. So
Feel that.
I'm just very happy about it.
Yes, your birthday's coming in October.
Yes, ma'am.
Fall starts in a few weeks. Okay. So we're going to get into why you're actually here. Were you here to hear about nails and glutes and hammies? Because you're in the right place. But we're actually going to be talking about something very exciting today, and that is collaborative divorce and what it is, the ins and outs of it, and it's probably something you're not expecting. There's a lot more specifics than meets the eye about what is a collaborative divorce. But before we get there, Andee, are you feeling like a warrior or a diplomat today?
I would say that I'm feeling like a diplomat today, which is perfect because we're going to be talking about a collaborative divorce, which I think falls within that realm easily. But, we've been getting cases resolved for some great clients, and people are feeling good. They're feeling like they're moving on to their next phase. Mm-hmm. And so I'm definitely feeling diplomat. How about you? Warrior or diplomat?
I am feeling warrior, as usual, because I just took a new case that goes to trial next week. We just got it last night. We got retained. So it means my team and I have only a few days to get ready for this trial. A lot at stake. It's high intensity, challenging. My client is just fabulous, and he needs our support right now. So my spirit, when I know there's a trial on the horizon, we're just going to be in warrior mode. But, if you've followed us, our brand is that we're both warriors and diplomats, and that we believe a great warrior is also a great diplomat. So I was telling Andee earlier, I'm like, it's very hard to switch hats from warrior to diplomat for someone like me, especially at the place I'm at in my career. I think it's a talent you have to develop, being able to be intense in the right moments, calm in the right moments, meeting in the middle at the right moments. And yesterday was one of those days for me where it was like, all right, warrior hat now. 1 minute later, you got to go put your diplomat hat on and go do something for the business. And that's great, but it's exhausting, especially when you're still learning the ropes.
Yeah. She's a master. Don't let her fool you.
Well, and so are you. I think that true masters are always hard on themselves. So
Absolutely.
That's why you hear me talking about it like I'm a pupil. I'll probably be 85 years old and still talking like that. And that's, to me, a trademark of a real winner and someone that wants to keep evolving. So, yeah.
100%.
So, Andee, tell us, what is a collaborative divorce?
So I get this question a lot, actually, and a collaborative divorce is just a process that some people choose. You still end up having to go through the same issues, come up with the same documents, file them in court, and that sort of thing. You just choose to do it in a different way, and usually it's for different reasons.
So, okay. Because I get a lot of clients that have come and consulted with me and said, okay, I see on your website that you guys do collaborative divorce and quote unquote regular divorce. So, what is that distinction exactly? And maybe you were starting to describe that, but can you explain that this is like, it's not just a mindset of collaboration, it's actually a process, like you're saying. What does that really mean?
So if you're going to participate in the collaborative divorce process, you actually opt into a process because everything you're doing in collaborative, you're doing before anything is filed in court. So with the idea that at the point at which it's filed, everything is resolved. And so there's an entire process that you go through. Each party has to have a collaboratively trained lawyer.
So, but okay, so both parties, before the divorce is even filed, they have to agree. We're both going to go get these collaboratively trained lawyers and do a collaborative divorce.
Correct.
So, how would those conversations even start between the parties? How have you seen that happen?
So sometimes people have done their research and somebody will come to me and they'll say, my spouse and I have talked, we want to do collaborative. I know that you're trained. And it'll start that way. Sometimes, not unlike regular divorce cases, one party may be a little further along in the emotional process of being ready for a divorce, and they've done their research, really want to do collaborative. So they'll come in and I'll meet with them and talk to them about the process and explain to them what needs to happen for it to actually go through that process. And it might take some time. They might have to start having conversations with their spouse to talk about collaborative, direct them to different resources so that they can arm themselves with information. And I can give referrals for a variety of collaboratively trained lawyers. I like to give several because I don't want to pick the lawyer for the other side. But one of the reasons that both lawyers have to be collaboratively trained is because there is a specific process that you follow, and that's part of the training is you learn how to follow that process.
So the lawyers that are collaboratively trained, they have to go through an actual program, or
Yes.
what does that program look like?
So I did my training in 2006. And it's a multi-day training with people who are collaboratively trained and are experts in the collaborative process. They've handled a ton of collaborative cases. And there's other professionals that are involved that we haven't touched on yet. There are lawyers that are collaboratively trained. There are financial neutrals. There are child specialists, and there are coaches. And they each play a different role. But when you go through the training to become certified, each one of those types of professionals participate in the training.
Okay.
And it's not all lawyers that are in it because
Okay.
every professional involved in the collaborative process has to be collaboratively trained.
So if two people have talked and they're both on the same page about let's do a collaborative divorce, then is it accurate that then only one of them could come have a consultation with one lawyer and the other one has to go have a consultation? They can never come meet with the same lawyer,
Correct.
even though it's collaborative. Why is that?
For the same reason that we can't meet with the same party. Sometimes we'll have people call in and they just want to do a mediation. And so they want to use the same lawyer. They can't do that. We're ethically bound because there is still privilege and confidentiality and conflict rules, despite the fact that you're opting into the collaborative process. So we honor that. So, while you do a limited waiver of confidentiality in collaborative because of the nature of how it works as you move through it, you still have confidentiality with your lawyer. So as a lawyer, we can't meet with both sides because that would be a conflict.
Okay, so the best course of action is probably something along the lines of somebody goes and meets with a collaborative attorney. If they can't find another one, that collaborative attorney can provide a list of other collaboratively trained. Are there lots of family law attorneys where we are? And we're in the Atlanta area. Are there a lot of collaboratively trained attorneys in your opinion?
There are a fair amount of collaboratively trained lawyers in Atlanta, and there are a number of people. They're all over the city, male and female, because, some people, they have a preference with regards to that.
And something I'd like to add there is that in my experience and what I see, these lawyers that are collaboratively trained, you're also going to see them as trial attorneys too. They're going to do both. I am sure there are some lawyers out there that say, I only do collaborative divorce cases. That's all I do. But the majority that I see, who not only do they do the collaborative divorce, but they're just as strong in the courtroom as well. Yes. And that's just an example for you guys that, you don't have to have a lawyer that's only got one approach as to how they're going to get you divorced. In fact, it's great to have a lawyer that is capable of kind of both angles and both sides. And I think it's a common misconception and a ploy to scare people away from really good lawyers, to say, oh, no, they're not ever going to be collaborative. They only go to trial. That's just not what I tend to see. Some of the most collaborative, whether that's the formal collaborative process or just collaborative by nature, some of the most collaborative attorneys I work with are killers in the courtroom. And that's how you garner respect in the courtroom, is being able to do both. You're showing that you're a reasonable person. So
absolutely. And, you tend to, like every profession, people have a tendency to pigeonhole, and they hear the one thing that they think you're good at. And it's like you always say, we talk about this all the time. It's one of the reasons why we are warriors and diplomats, because we feel like the best, most effective professionals have all those traits that they bring to the table.
And it's a superpower to be able to, again, put on different hats and use them in the right scenarios. It's exhausting. It takes balance, but it's a learned skill. Okay, before we talk about the process and what it looks like, can you explain what would people look like, seem like, not physically, but who are good candidates for a collaborative divorce and who are not good candidates?
Right. So it's such a good question, and people looking into collaborative always ask me that. So generally speaking, I think the guiding principle in collaborative cases is that both parties agree that they want to move through this process and maintain some sort of relationship on the other side. They want to avoid litigation for the sake of their relationship, whether it's just to be parents of their children. They may want to be friends on the other side of it. They want to maintain that connection that can often get really damaged in litigation. And so when they both come into the process committed to that outcome, then the rest tends to follow it. And just so that we're clear, it's not that people don't come in with the exact same type of issues as regular divorce cases. We still see in collaborative cases, we see issues with regards to infidelity. I mean, all the reasons that lead to people getting divorced, they're still present in collaborative cases. People have just decided they want to move through this process in a way with a goal to usually to maintain a relationship and usually for the benefit of their children.
And who would you say, because in my opinion, when there have been instances of domestic violence and some serious mental abuse, at some point we have to draw the line and say you're not a good candidate for collaborative divorce, because even though the other person's saying they want to do this, like, it's not safe for you, and here's why. What would that look like?
So that manifests in a lot of different ways. First of all, when you sign on to the collaborative process, you sign a collaborative participation agreement, and you agree to all of these sort of baseline behaviors that you will or will not engage in throughout the collaborative process. And it's much like if you were to file a case in court, there's certain things in a domestic relations standing order that the court says you have to do or not do. You're signing on to them in the collaborative process, and it's an agreement that you're making. It's a binding agreement, but one of the things that you agree to, because we don't have formal discovery in the collaborative process, is you're agreeing to full and fair disclosure of all assets and information. This is important. You're going to have a financial neutral in the case. You share information with them so they can put together your marital balance sheet and that sort of thing. And so, if you've got a relationship where one person uses finances and information as a weapon, they're probably not going to be a good candidate for collaborative. And where I've seen collaborative cases fall apart is if one party thinks that they'll get a better result by doing the collaborative process because they think that their spouse just wants to agree to whatever it is they're going to put in front of them. They think they can manipulate the process. And usually collaboratively trained lawyers, we can weed that out in the initial meeting, because it starts with an initial meeting with both lawyers and both clients to sign on to the collaborative practice agreement. And you can kind of sniff that out because we have an entire conversation. We walk through all the tenets of what they're signing up for, what they're agreeing to do, that basically like a code of conduct through the process. And you can start to pick up on that. But, you know, if you've got somebody who's like that, they're not going to be a good candidate. Domestic violence cases generally are not good candidates in collaborative. That's where you might see something like that if somebody has engaged in some sort of domestic violence and they don't tell us, but that need for power and control starts to emerge during the collaborative process.
Yes, some of the most wealthy and powerful litigants that I've dealt with on the other side have been very forceful about their desire to want to do a collaborative divorce. And there were too many red flags to be able to move. I mean, really high-end cases, lots of money on the table. And as it turns out, as you know, we would get through the litigation, not having gone the formal collaborative route. Lo and behold, that the one I'm thinking of definitely withheld information, and it took, even though we had a financial neutral in our divorce case, you can still have a financial neutral in a divorce even if you're not collaborative, but that's kind of another topic. But anyway, our neutral would be like, you agreed to use me as a neutral and you are hiding information from me as the forensic accountant. You thought you were going to get away with this. And it's just, I do tend to notice that sometimes it's just something to be aware of. A lot of times people that are manipulative and controlling and feel like they have a lot of the financial control and knowledge, they're going to want to say they want to use collaborative divorce as a way to keep their power and have more control over information, which is really not going to work. In the collaborative process, that would be uncovered. And you'd probably just have to go a formal divorce at that point and get out of the collaborative realm.
So yes, you would. And here's something to know about the collaborative process too. One of the things that you agree to as a party when you sign on to it, and the lawyers sign the participation agreement as well, is that either one of you can opt out of the collaborative process at any point. If you feel like it's just you are being abused or something's going wrong, then you can opt out. But what you need to know when you do that, the collaborative process is over and you can no longer use your lawyers that you had in the collaborative process in litigation. And so that keeps a lot of people kind of honest in the process, because it's not that you don't have emotional moments. It's not that you don't get frustrated by something the other side says, or, that sort of thing. That happens because you're humans and you have emotions and you're bringing those into the process. We manage them in a different way. But it will make people stop before they have a bad day, somebody irritates them and they're like, screw this, I'm out of here, I'm going to go do regular divorce, because they don't want to have to start over in litigation. But when you've got those cases where somebody is trying to abuse the process to their own ends, sometimes, and the lawyers or the professionals can call it too. They can say, this is over. It's not going to work. But you do have to start over with a new slate of people. So for people who are really in it, even when they hit rough patches, they'll stay in it. And that's the idea behind that requirement.
So can you walk us through then the process? So you mentioned there's an initial meeting with lawyers and parties, and you sign the initial agreement.
Right.
Then walk us through, what does the process look like to conclusion?
Okay, so you have the initial meeting. So each party has hired their collaboratively trained attorney. We have an initial, we call it a four-way meeting, which is both lawyers and both parties. We walk through, there's two agreements that you sign, a collaborative participation agreement and a statement of understanding. And so there is some overlap on what's in them, but fundamentally it's the things we've already talked about. But also in that meeting, and as part of the statement of understanding, we go through what are the different professionals that are going to be involved in this case. A child specialist, if there are children, the divorce coaches, the financial neutral.
How do y'all pick which professionals you're going to use?
You're literally reading my mind.
So can you tell I'm a courtroom attorney and we're not supposed to let witnesses just ramble? So I'm like, let me throw in a question to keep guiding the conversation. Sorry, Andee.
And I'm literally about to answer the question that you want to ask.
Which is so typical of us too.
I know.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize.
Yeah, how do you pick the specialists?
Well, and we do that in that initial meeting.
Okay.
So, and usually the lawyers will have talked before the initial meeting and might throw out some names of some people. You know, when you've done enough collaborative cases, you know, depending on the circumstances, the parties, certain professionals might be sort of ideally suited for that particular case. And so we'll talk about it ahead of time. Usually we're on the same page, and then we go ahead and talk through it formally in that initial meeting, and we select those people. And then after that meeting, we reach out to everybody, get the team in place, and we start to move through the process. At the initial meeting, you identify, are there any temporary issues that we need to address and come up with agreements about? And if we can in that meeting, we will. If we need additional professionals, we'll do that. But you move through the process very similarly to how you would through a divorce. It's just, you just gather information and share information in a different way. So once you get the professionals involved, you start talking with the divorce coaches. They help you manage the emotions of the situation. They also help craft a parenting plan if you've got kids. The financial neutral is going to start asking for documents from each of you to start putting together the marital balance sheet. As we move through it, if temporary issues come up, we're going to continue to address those. We're going to identify, how is this all getting paid for? What asset or assets are we using to pay for all of this? And we're having these conversations together. And that's one of the fundamentally different ways that collaborative operates, because it's not like that in a regular divorce case. I mean, we do have those conversations, but it's not in the same way.
Yeah, it's not with professional kind of advisors involved and advising, and it is very different. So it sounded like you had mentioned at the beginning, one of the positives to this process is leaving the process, hopefully less stress. You haven't been through litigation, and then preserving the relationship so that the parties can remain friends or co-parent better together in the future. Is it also cheaper? Or necessarily cheaper?
It's funny. People think because you have all these professionals that collaborative must necessarily be more expensive. Generally speaking, it can be less expensive because you have professionals staying in their lane. And, you know, the divorce coaches whose rates are lower than attorneys are dealing with some of the emotional issues around it and drafting the parenting plan. The financial neutral whose rates are also lower than attorneys, they're handling their piece, and the lawyers are handling the drafting piece. So it's really a good division of labor. So if it's something that you're comfortable with, you can actually save money doing it.
I think it goes to this theme that we talk about on a lot of our podcasts, which is a good family law attorney, our job is to bridge the gap between emotion and business. And divorces can get so expensive for lots of reasons, but one of the most common underlying variables that would lead to these extra expensive divorces is emotions that are out of control and lawyers that don't know how to get a client under control. And I think that when you're entering into a collaborative case, you're really generally dealing with two people that are already probably a little more level-headed and emotionally stable than some of the litigants that come into full-fledged divorce litigation. But that's not to say that I actually believe that anybody going through a divorce, regardless of how removed you feel from your ex or future ex, regardless of that, it is emotional. It just is. I have plenty of clients that like to say, I'm fine. And I'm like, no, you're disassociating and you're avoiding, and that's okay. But we need to give you that space.
Right.
Anyway, okay, so the cost piece, we talked about that. What are the potential negatives to a collaborative divorce? Are they long and drawn out? Can they get long and drawn out? What's the negatives?
So, you know, can somebody potentially abuse the process to drag it out if they don't want the divorce to happen for some reason within a particular period of time? I mean, they have a little more opportunity to do that because you're not on the court schedule. You haven't filed the case with the court. But generally speaking, if folks are both committed to working through it properly, with the same goals in mind, it can actually move a lot more quickly than a litigated case. It depends on how complicated are the assets, what are the issues with regards to custody and parenting. I mean, we still have to work through all those issues, have meetings together with different portions of the team, and move the case forward. So, and sometimes if people, just like in a divorce case, a regular divorce case, if people are not in the same place emotionally, that can slow down the process.
Oh, yeah.
But that's not anybody's fault. I mean, the
Right.
principle for doing this process in the first place is still there, but one party just may be more emotionally ready to bring it to conclusion than the other, and so the team can help guide that.
Right.
And so that it doesn't become a situation where one party is malingering.
Are collaborative divorces recommended more for people that are like have a certain amount of net worth than others, or does it matter? Is there a preference?
No, I have found that high net worth people like collaborative divorces for a number of reasons, not the least of which is they are more private. And so their stuff isn't filed in court as it's happening and that kind of thing. So, sort of celebrity types or high net worth folks have opted for collaborative for that reason. I've had clients like that. But no, I mean, you bring the same issues to be resolved to the table. So it's not necessarily for high net worth people versus, we have cases where you've got two people, they have W-2 jobs and, maybe a little retirement and a house and kids. And so it's the same issues we have to work out.
Well, I think that collaborative divorce is a sophisticated and really more finessed and elevated method. And that's what we're all about here, is figuring out ways to lead people into a new future and a new chapter. And it's inevitable that typically nobody's leaving financially better after divorce. We would hope you're going to reach a new emotional place of happiness after divorce. And as responsible lawyers, it's our job to be able to provide all different options for our clients so that we can help walk you into a new chapter and create that new chapter with you, build it for you, and help you evolve. And I think that collaborative divorce is a very unique way to do that, and that we'd like to see happening more. Is there anything else you think we should add to this convo?
Well, one thing I would say too, because people do ask this, and we touched on it in the beginning, is that when you move through the process, the ultimate goal is the same as a regular divorce case. At the conclusion, before anything's filed, you've reached a settlement agreement, you have a parenting plan, you have all the final documents that you will need to guide your life moving forward. And then when you file it, it's an uncontested divorce. So you never have the experience of having to go to court for any reason, and you can control the timeline on that because there's some reasons people enter into collaborative. For instance, if you've got a person who has a serious illness and they need to maintain insurance for a particular amount of time, when you're on the court's timeline, that timeline may come to conclusion before you're ready for it, but you can control that in the collaborative process.
And taxes and those sorts
all
of things.
of those things. And one other thing I just want to make sure is clear about collaborative is, the collaboratively trained professionals are experts at helping people look forward and not back. So one thing that they keep everybody from doing, which is tricky because people have emotions in divorce cases, whether or not they're collaborative, is we don't play the blame game in collaborative. And because it doesn't advance the ball, and it doesn't anyway, but there's a way to work through that with like a coach or something where you're not sort of hijacking the process with
love
it.
that.
So that's a huge focus of collaborative. As you're moving forward to conclusion, you're coming up with those final documents, and then you have an uncontested divorce. So that's just really broad brushstrokes, kind of the beginning and the end of the process.
I love that. So yes, one of the big takeaways being, yes, once you reach your agreement in the collaborative process, it gets filed with the court. Your divorce gets finalized on paper. You never set foot into the courtroom, which as Andee said, functions like an uncontested divorce. Right. And that's such a fabulous notion about being forward facing and not backwards looking during this process. I mean, in any divorce, collaborative or not. And then as we are in this office with the brand we've built here and the culture here, we are forward facing. We're always evolving and we're doing it together. And that's something we really enjoy building into our cases. And I think collaborative law absolutely lends itself to that. And I think that's important in our society as we keep evolving. And maybe we can weed out more of the highly litigious situations if we can show that this will get the job done. You can still have your emotion, but you're going to get a fair result this way. So with that, we'll leave you be. Thank you so much for joining us. Please follow us on all of our socials on Instagram and Facebook at Hastings Shadmary. And you can find the Hastings Shadmary Show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. You can find my personal Instagram, mshadmary, and my fitness account, and Andee's at Andee Hastings. Come find us. We love conversing with you all. Let us know what you might want to hear about in the future, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
The Hastings Shadmary Show is a production of Hastings Shadmary Family Law and 1066 Productions. Produced by Ned Hastings and Kendall Walker and edited by Ned Hastings.